just lightly line in the shapes that I've lined in. And I put a cross, and it might be helpful for you to do the same, in the middle of those two cloud shapes, just to remind yourself that you're not going to put any water on those. The next step will be to dampen everything else with clean water, apart from those two shapes.
The shape down here behind the boat and the one above.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And don't put the boat in, and don't put the people in, and don't put the groin in either. You know, that little bit, that post that's sticking up in the sea. Don't put that in. Keep all those little figurative elements out. All we need at the moment is just a line for the sea and the landmass and those two cloud shapes.
And I must say, Nikos, who's 18, was really good.
Ah.
And I'm here with Thomas, who's wired me up to all the contraptions.
Wonderful.
Hello, Thomas.
He's upstairs shouting at someone.
Whose sons are these?
Well,
Catherine is Thomas's mother, my daughter.
Yeah.
And Nikos is Robert's son, and Robert is Yvonne's son.
Yeah, my eldest.
You've got two, haven't you, Yvonne?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Same as Sally. Have you got two, Sue?
Yeah, I've got two sons and a daughter like Sally.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
But we share our offspring.
That's very nice.
Is Thomas still not well then?
No, he's just got an unexpected inset day.
Oh, right.
And so has Matthew, but Matthew went out early this morning to be with his friends for the day.
Oh, because they're all on half term, aren't they?
Next week.
Next week.
Are they not on half term this week?
No.
So
it's James that does 2 weeks, and independent schools.
Yeah, some of the independent schools do too, don't they? Yeah. Right, here comes Prue. What you could do is mix up those 5 or 4 colours that I sent you this morning. If you're waiting or you want to have something underway, I think having a fair bit of the blue sky mixture, because you can use that in the sea as well, and obviously the raw sienna with the touch of alizarin in it. There's quite a large amount of that down in this bottom left-hand corner. It's not like the painting we were doing last week and the week before. You don't need vast quantities, but you need to have enough so that you don't run out and have to remix it. The outside of your cloud shapes, I put a cross in both of them, because the next step, once you just do a few lines for the the sort of landmass and the horizon line and the water. Put a cross in the middle of the clouds, because when we come to the next step will be to actually dampen with clean water everything apart from those two shapes. This one here, which is the colour I've mixed for the sky. Now, in my printout, the left-hand side of the sky has slightly a reddish feel to it. So it looks as though he's mixed up his blue and then dropped a bit of alizarin into it. But I think initially we would make up a colour for the whole of that sky area, that bit at the top, which is made up from the Prussian blue and ultramarine. Now, I know he mentions indigo in his book, and if for those of you that have got the book, he mentions using indigo and Prussian blue. Indigo is, well, it's this colour. That one there. Oops, sorry. That one there is very dark. Well, that's quite a strong mixture, but basically it's like Prussian blue and ultramarine together with a tiny bit of black in it. So I think we're just going to have to put that aside because most of us won't have that colour. And I think we just have to do an approximation and use the colours we have got and work with the colours we've got, which is Prussian blue and ultramarine. Now, to make this sort of slightly warmer, if you like, bit on the left-hand side, I would suggest that you could take some of your blue mix and add a tiny weeny bit of alizarin to it in your palette, so in one of your wells. And then once you've done the blue, you can and let it dry a bit, then you can go over it with a wash of that blue with the red in. But we won't do that at the moment. We'll just go through what we're going to use. The other colour here is raw sienna and a very small touch of alizarin, which I would suggest is most of this. Okay, now if you haven't got raw sienna, then you have to use yellow ochre. Sorry, I'll move the picture up. Right, okay, can you see it now? So what I'm saying is for this big sort of area here, I would suggest that was raw sienna with a tiny touch of alizarin, or yellow ochre with a tiny touch of alizarin in. It's a sort of, it's a kind of pale orange, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. Now this colour here, that brown, which is quite a lot of sort of pale brown here, I basically made it with a small, very small, and I would emphasize very small, because you know how powerful Prussian blue is, very small amount of Prussian blue, mainly raw sienna or yellow ochre, and alizarin again to make that brown. If it starts to look grey, it's because you've got too much blue in it and not enough of your yellow and your red. And then finally, this one down the bottom here, which you could just do a straightforward yellow ochre, because that's what this one over here is, just straightforward yellow ochre. The one I mixed was raw sienna with a little bit of gamboge. Again, it has a sort of slightly yellowy feel down the bottom here. So again, that would have been dropped in and allowed to fuse with what's underneath it. So it's sort of like 2 layers of paint. Okay. Now, I don't expect you to do all this in one go. I think what we will start with initially is making sure that you've got the Prussian blue and ultramarine mix and the raw sienna or yellow ochre and alizarin mix. So those 2 colours there. Because if you look at the top of the painting, obviously the next stage after the lining in pencil is to working from the top of the page down, which is what we would do with the landscape. We paint the sky. So before doing that, you should have, all of you, painted clean water over everything apart from those 2 cloud shapes, which I said to put a cross in to remind yourself. Everything else should have a wash of water on it. Especially, I mean, we're working on the sky area, so if you haven't done the bottom, don't worry about it. We will start by painting the blues in, okay? All right. Really be careful when you go around the cloud shape that you just keep the water on to the right of the line. You don't go over the line. When you get to the bottom of the page, don't worry too much, because we're not going to do the landmass and the sea just yet. So I guess you could put it over the area of the sea. Maybe put some water on there. Now I'm going to start to use the other colour mixture, which is the raw sienna mixture. I'm literally going to drop it in over the blue and let those two colours fuse a bit on this right hand side. And the same over here. I'm not going to actually take that orangey sienna colour all the way. I am going to use some of my brown mix if you've done it. If you haven't done it, then don't worry. What you need to do straight away while this is still wet, and mine is really wet, is to now add a bit of alizarin into another area on your palette and add blue to it. So we create this sort of slightly warmer, grayer blue. Too much. Now, if I drop it in now, it's not going to work because this is too wet. So I'm just going to dry it off a wee bit. If you drag it, you'll end up with streak marks, but I'm just going to drop bits of this new mixed colour, which is basically the blue with a bit of alizarin in it. I'm just literally dropping it in over the top of the damp blue underneath. It looks like he's taken it right the way across almost to the other point of the cloud. That's it. Okay, now while this is still damp, I would like you, if you possibly can, if I hope I'm not going too fast, is to get some of that third colour, which was the mixture of Prussian blue, yellow ochre, and a tiny bit of alizarin. In other words, the brown. And it's quite a pale sort of brown. So again, I take whatever you've got mixed up and maybe dilute it a bit so that it's not too strong.
Sue?
Yes.
Did you wet all over the sky, or did you leave that bit that you've got the cross in?
I left the bit with the crosses in because I want to have a
sharp edge.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Now sorry, this isn't the right colour I picked up.
Got it.
There's a bit more of that in it, red in it. Okay. So I'm now going in with this brown mixture into, and it's still damp underneath, which is lovely. And I'm going to make this colour fuse into the edge of the blue sky, which is still wet. Okay. And then finally, this bottom area, I'm going to use the raw sienna or gamboge and yellow ochre mixture.
Did you go right down to the bottom with wetting?
I took the water over the sea bit, but the only bit that hasn't got water on is this lamb mass bit here on the left.
Okay.
Remember, you can soften things by putting a little bit of water. So like this area here is very soft as it comes into the cloud. It's not a hard edge like at the top there. So I've just put some water, extra water on it, just so that the colour dilutes as I push it down. Now this isn't going to be blue down here, so I'm going to get rid of that. Right, so you should have a sort of wet look like that at the moment, where all the colours are very wet, and you know, nothing has a hard edge on it at all, apart from this bit at the top here. And then you can go back into your blue for the sea area down the bottom here, which is quite a thin strip. And while it's still wet, I just get the colour in. It'll dry paler. And what I'm also doing is diluting that blue and going over this shape here. If you want to look, the shape immediately underneath the cloud, which is, it's obviously a land mass that's very much in the distance, and you can barely see it behind the dinghy. I hope all of you have got your boards at least 30-degree angle, because you do not want the colours to run back on themselves too much. They should have the feeling of the water carrying the colour down the page. Now, if you look at your painting from, get your head down and look at it sideways along, mine looks extremely shiny. And that's how yours should look. And if it isn't shiny, it means it's too dry. Don't try doing any painting on it at the moment. We'll just talk about it in a second.